Hello and greetings, fellow quitters. Welcome back to the Command Q podcast. We're your hosts. I'm John Pelfrey.
And I'm Mari Casey.
If you're someone who started a business, we think you'll probably agree that the scariest part is the moment you move out of the planning phase and take that first real step, that first real risk. You can have big aspirations and even a very detailed business plan, but nothing actually goes the way that you think it will, which means now you're exposing yourself to challenges, criticism, and possibly failure before you've even gotten started. So if you've been considering starting your own business, but you're struggling to pull the trigger, this conversation is for you. We're going to be talking about what you need to do on the front end to set yourself up for success. And it's going to go beyond the theoretical so that you can start building something that's real. So, Mari, how did you announce the creation of Uncompany to the world?
So it's interesting because I'd already been freelancing for like 5 years up to that point. So I'd kind of already started my freelancing business. And then I had this idea for Uncompany and I just overthinking it. Am I really going to do this? Is this a real thing? You always feel like that. It's kind of like, I have a business. Why am I going to start this other one? And it feels a little impostery. And it's interesting because I remember I had put together a whole deck of what it was going to be like. Of course, it's all changed at this point. So that was 15 years ago, but put the whole deck together and I presented it to a couple people, a couple like other business owners, agency owners. And I remember presenting it and I believed in it probably like 75%, maybe I'm being generous, maybe like 60%. I was like, it's like, here's this great idea. Isn't it awesome? And I presented it and it's like, I needed someone to also like understand it with me. And so I kept marinating over the idea. And I remember getting a call and I was walking through Target. And this agency owner called me and he's like, you know what? I was thinking about your idea of Uncompany and I think it's a really great idea, blah, blah, blah. And it's interesting, like that one person kind of helping me believe in it even further really is why I did it. Like I was really just like, I'm unsure. And so once I did that and once I had one person who like also supported me in the idea, then I was like, I'm going for it. I'm moving forward. And so that's really when I started to, I kind of fully transitioned over. I'm like stopped identifying myself as a freelancer and more of like as Uncompany. And I put it on LinkedIn and I talked about it. I just started talking about it a lot more. And so once I started talking about it more and kind of getting people more on board with it, it became a lot easier. But it was that transition of being able to get myself to fully believe and to buy in was definitely like a process.
Yeah, I think that might be the hardest part is getting yourself to fully believe that you can actually do it. And then when you start talking about it to people that you know, and then also to complete strangers, and you start introducing yourself as this is me and this is what I do and this is who I am and this is my business or whatever it is, it starts to become more and more real. And I found that every time I've started a business, if I say this is what I'm doing, and even if it's to strangers or whatever, there becomes this level of accountability that I'm like, okay, well now I have to really do it. Like I can't just like talk about it. And then when they see me 6 months from now, go like, hey, how's that new thing that you're doing? And me be like, well, I never actually got started on that. The more people I talk to, the more urgency I felt that I have to do it now.
Yeah. Accountability is so huge.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if it's like accountability to strangers, you never know in your town, if you're talking to people and you meet them at a networking event or whatever, like you might bump into them randomly at the grocery store or whatever. And the thing they're going to remember is what you said, hey, I'm building this new business, doing this thing. If they remember anything about you at all, that's what they're going to remember. And they're going to say, hey, what's going on with that?
Yeah.
And so you got to have an answer. The next time you see somebody, you got to be like, well, I've started doing this, or I got my first new client, or I talked to these people over here, or I went to this workshop or whatever.
Yeah. And that's a surefire way to make sure that you're moving forward is to tell people about it because of that reason. If you don't tell anyone, then like no one's going to ask you about it and you're safe. But if you like start telling people, even like your mailman, you're going to bump into him at some point and he's going to ask you. So it's a good way to like push yourself a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So why do you think that the planning part is so fun for so many people, but then the actual starting to do the real work part is so scary? I have my own.
I love planning. You know me. I'm like, I have an idea. It's just like that is the best part. Because there's no risk involved. It's not real yet. It's just the idea of what it could be. And so you haven't made a full decision. Like you come up with an idea, you have some loose ideas, some loose plans, but you haven't said, okay, I'm going to start hanging my hat on this idea. That's when it gets to be a little bit more scary because it's more public and there's a risk of failure and there's a risk of making a mistake. when it's in the planning phase, it's all just, like, it's all ideas, which are just lovely to have.
Yeah, yeah. Ideas are free. I had a friend tell me that once. He's like, ideas are free. Action, action is where, the rubber meets the road. That's
Uh-huh.
where you're either spending the money or the time or the energy, the effort. By that point, your action means that you're required to invest something into it. But ideas are completely free and you can have a million of them and other people can have a million ideas too. Nobody owns an idea. What people own is the action that they take. And that is the big difference. But taking that first step can be scary, but to me, it goes into this whole like, if you take little baby steps into it and you're always just taking a little bit of action at a time, it
Mhm.
doesn't feel like a giant leap. It doesn't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm risking my entire world and my house and my, kids'
Yeah.
future college fund and what I'm not risking all that. If I'm just taking one little step at a time, I'm taking one small risk at a time. And yeah, there might be a time when like let's say you're making a product and you get a big order and all of a sudden you've got to fork over a big chunk of cash up front in order to fund the order and do all that thing can get really scary, but you will have taken so many little steps before you get to that point that it'll almost feel inevitable. I don't find that many people, I mean there are the occasions, but it's rare that you go like, you know what? I'm going to take $100,000 of equity out of my house. I'm going to dump it into this business and it's all or nothing. And it's rarely like
Yeah.
that. Usually it's like one little step, two little steps, three little steps. So that if you get to the point where you do need a big chunk of money or whatever, you've taken some action, you've got some social proof that the thing is probably going to work.
Well, and it's like, it is, some people like to jump in off the cliff vibe. And I think I'm a risk taker, but I'm definitely a mitigated risk taker. And I tell people, I'm like, don't, don't quit your full-time job and just throw everything in there with no runway, with no testing, nothing. Like, if you do that, okay, that's your prerogative, but I would not want to live like that. I would want to live by like, I'm going to slowly start freelancing. I'm slowly going to start talking to clients. I'm going to slowly start doing things. I'm going to have a few clients kind of in my book. So if I do transition from full-time into starting my business, it's not like I'm jumping off the cliff into the void. And I think that's a smart way to do it. If you're a risk taker and you like to, base jump on the weekends and maybe maybe that's your vibe of doing it, that's fine. But it's just, there's different ways to do it where it doesn't feel so like so huge, such a huge jump.
Yeah.
And I think the nice thing with taking this kind of stair step approach, like you're talking about, is when we start out, we have an idea of like what our business is going to be like, right?
Mhm.
If you do fully commit to everything without any kind of like stair stepping, then it's hard to it's hard to pivot as you go through. If you're taking little steps, you're like, well, I thought my clients were going to be small businesses, mom and pop type restaurants, but like I'm actually getting more traction with like dry cleaners and photographers and landscapers. So I'm really glad I didn't commit to fully only focusing on this audience. If you take smaller jumps, so smaller little steps, then it allows you to transition from your idea of what you thought it was going to be like to actually what it is, as opposed to feeling like you have to completely start over all the time.
Yeah. I mean, we'll just use Uncompany as an example. How many different pivots did you make in those first 2 years? How many
Yeah.
like the idea that you thought you were going to do versus what it's actually turned into 10 years later? Like it's a big difference.
hmm
It's
Yeah.
huge. So can you explain a little bit of that to them? Like what the initial thought was and then how it changed a little bit over time?
Yeah. I think it's hard when you make your idea too precious
Mhm.
and too perfect. And I think especially as designers and creatives or people who are looking for control, which if you're starting self-employment, you're trying to find something that gives you a sense of control. And if you hold on that too tightly, then you're going to miss opportunities. And I think with Uncompany, when when it first started out, it was very much focused on like freelancer focus only, like an advocacy group and I still think there's an aspect of that. But quickly we realized, well, we need to make sure that we have jobs and things coming in because it needs to support the business financially so that we can add more community content resources to our freelancers. And so we had to focus really on the clients versus only the freelancers, which is kind of
Mhm.
how originally it was very freelancer focused. And then it became like, okay, well, our clients are also a huge part of our business. We need to make it very client focused. And then just by doing that, we realized, oh crap, like the process of working with freelancers, the operations of working with talent between clients and freelancers is a hot mess. And it's interesting because then our business became very operationally and like
Mhm.
workflow focused, which is kind of where I think our strength is. So yeah, by doing that, kind of be like, what is, maybe they want this. No, but like a lot of testing and changing. I think our business became a lot stronger. But if I had locked in and be like, no, we're only going to do this, then I think I don't know if it's still be in business, honestly. So you have to be
Yeah.
ready to change.
I mean, going from a freelancer advocacy group or like, helping to promote freelancers in general, it is hard to make money on that in general to pay your bills. But then it's also hard to help other freelancers. Like the way you want to do that is by helping them to get jobs, which means, you've
Yeah.
got to sell to clients and then selling into clients. And how do you do that and explain the process? It does every step along the way presents new sets of challenges, and then it presents new opportunities that you never imagined. And I think that's one of the things that's so interesting about starting a business is the thing that you have in your head 6 months later, you're probably doing something different that you never ever thought about. It never even
Yeah.
occurred to you that it could be a possibility of a job for people. Like I've run into so many people where I'm like, oh, that's your job? Like you do this one weird little thing over there. And, and it's amazing how, again, you take those tiny little steps and then eventually it sort of reveals itself like, oh, here's the real opportunity for me. But if I never take those early steps, I never see the real opportunity. To
Mhm.
me, that's the message I want to get across to people.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So what are some things like, okay, so we're taking these baby steps, right? And we're getting through the process. What are some things that we need to start to think about early on? Maybe things that we need to have in place before we get started or very soon after. And so I'm talking about things like, do we need to form that LLC? What are the tax things that we need to think about? We probably need a tax ID instead of having our social security number floating around out there in the
Please
world
do.
for people to use. Invoicing, bookkeeping, there's a million different things. What are a couple of actionable items or things that people can do early on to really make life easy later?
I think once you decide that you're like, yes, I'm doing this, I think there's a few key first steps in terms of, I think building a launch for yourself is great. And like LinkedIn and social and content, and like it makes it really easy to announce, like, I am now a business and I am doing this. So I would say update your LinkedIn, build a LinkedIn profile that focuses on your business, put your portfolio in there or put a PDF that tells what you do. I think having some kind of if you don't want to build a website, like you can build a website pretty simple now. I kind of feel like everybody who has a business should have a site. But if you don't do that, then use your LinkedIn as that. So you're using that to promote yourself and a way to sell yourself. So you're tagging people, you have a PDF that tells them your services, your prices, all that kind of stuff. I would do that. I would get a legit email that's not like, cool girl at 23 at yahoo.com. Like get a
Yeah.
business email that legitimizes yourself. And then I always say it's like you can really operate as a sole proprietorship for however long you want. Entities, we actually have a whole webinar on our website about entity basics. Definitely go check it out if you have more questions about that. But getting an LLC is not crazy expensive. It's like whatever, $299, $250, $275, something there in there. And I would it's again, it legitimizes you. It gives you a little level of protection. I would go ahead and do that just because it's a really easy thing to have. And then it's like, okay, it kind of helps you feel like I'm a legit business. I'm filing an annual report every year. Like I'm real. It also helps you kind of convince yourself that I am a real business. Do that, set up a business banking account that also starts to allow you to separate your finances. Again, it's a little weird in your brain to be like, I am a business and I am a person. And I'm the same person physically, but I'm two different entities. It's good practice to start thinking about that. I'm going to be invoicing my clients with my business bank account, and I'm going to be paying myself as as to my personal. It helps to keep them separate for bookkeeping purposes, but also long-term planning. So you can start to identify, like, all right, I'm averaging $4,000 a month, $5,000 a month in my business bank account. Now I know future, I can plan for that. And I can kind of say revenue-wise, quarterly, I'm going to have this, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's just good to do that in the beginning. Business bank account, LLC, legit email, and update your LinkedIn. And like those first things are really nice to have because it makes you feel like you're a real business as well. So it's a little like self-convincing is always helpful.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I think I would add to the business email side to say register a domain name, whatever that domain name is for your business or for your thing. Get a website with your domain name and then pay to get email with your domain name on it. It is like a simple thing. It costs you $30 a year for the domain name. It might cost you $10 a month, $15 a month for the website and the email, whatever that is. that is a good first expense, because people will take you more seriously. That
Mhm.
website and that domain name, that's your storefront to the world. You don't have to go buy and build a store or a brick and mortar store anymore that could cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars and, upfit and all of these other different things, only to walk away from it when your lease is over. Like, this is, you're spending less than $20 a month here.
Yeah.
You can use any number of Wix, Squarespace, whatever. There's AI generating tools now. There's all kinds of things to build a website that it can just be one page and this is what I do. Download this PDF. Here's my contact information. That's it. Don't make it complicated, but legitimize yourself to the world so that you can put that on LinkedIn, so that when you add onto your resume, I am this business, I do these things now, you can link out to a website and it just really feels like, okay, it's a real
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I have in here too, the notes that it's like, once you have those things in place, then you're going to add in your business protection type of stuff, which is going to be your bookkeeping software. It can be very simple. You don't need to get a heavy duty QuickBooks subscription. It can
Mm-mm.
be very simple, a way to invoice, a process for contracts. It's interesting because I remember when I first started to, it's like you're working with small businesses, you're working with friends, and you're like, I'm cool. I'm like the cool one. We don't need to be all like professional because trust me, I don't care if you're doing a logo for a friend, like have a contract, have it in place, have it
Yeah.
clearly outlined. This is what I'm doing for you. These are the deliverables. Here's the number of rounds that it covers. Here's the timeline I'm delivering it. Here's my expectations of you for feedback. Here's what I'm charging. Have
Mhm.
it signed. Just do it. Because if you don't, then there's always like, oh, but I thought, we're buddies. Like, maybe
Mhm.
give me another week. Like, is it okay if I just add this? It's like, you always want to have that contract paper to go back to and say, we said it's only going to be 3 social media posts. You're asking for 5. So I'm going to add an additional fee.
Yeah.
That's so essential to do in the beginning. And it can just be a Word doc. It doesn't have to be fancy. A lot of those invoicing softwares have all that built in. It's template. It's nice. You can add your logo. I think having some kind of contract, a template, having some kind of invoicing software, having a little bit of a brand is nice. Like, you don't have to go spend a ton of money on a designer. You can do a lot yourself, but having something that visually represents you too, so that I can see your email come in, or I can see your contract come in and be, oh, that's for that person. I think those are really nice things to start adding after you kind of get the basic stuff set up.
Yeah, absolutely. I would add to your contract or statement of work thing there, also put payment terms in there, so that yes, you're
Yes.
charging a certain amount of money, but I expect you to pay me within a
To
certain
get
number of
it.
days, or that you agree on a certain number of days to get that payment. That's
Mhm.
helpful too, just to be able to have some accountability on the other side. Like, if I give you this invoice and we agree that you're going to pay me in the next 45 days, then I know that in 45 days, net 45, you're going to cut me a check back. Whatever
Yep.
that is, terms are negotiable just like anything else, but it helps to know sort of when you're going to get paid. And on that end, what we're seeing in the freelance world is, net 45 is starting to become kind of the standard in the world. Sometimes it's getting pushed out even a little farther than that. Unfortunately, gone are the days of net 30. I think just in our world at least.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're seeing on our side. But those are all things you can use AI to help you build that contract or that statement of work too. You can prompt it. It's incredible. You just give it the basics. It'll put the stuff in there and then go pull up all the fluff that AI throws in there, or tell it not to give you the fluff, and then it'll sound like really nice and professional and clean
Well, and
and
this thing now, it's so different than when I started freelancing, is like a lot of the software stuff, the invoicing software, everything is baked in. So besides helping you create a template to invoice, you can set it to like email them at net 30. So they're reminded. If they don't pay it, then email them every 2 weeks or every week. It can do that automatically for
yeah,
you, which is wonderful from a like time management and keeping track of your client standpoint. So a lot of that stuff is just already kind of baked in. And a lot of the invoice will also have certain types of contracts. They'll have NDAs and they'll have, subcontractor agreements and all that stuff. So there's a lot of things and resources available that are kind of baked into the systems if you can find the right one.
yep, yeah, absolutely. All right. So those are some things that you need before you launch. Let's talk about what you need from a person perspective, like,
Hmm.
the support network. What are the types of things that maybe you need on the personal side or the support side that can help you as you get going?
It's funny because I think a lot of times when you're doing something new, you do it in isolation because you're afraid to fail in front of people, right? So you're like, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do this. I'm not going to tell you I'm doing it until all of a sudden it's working really well and then I'll bring it out. But the problem is, especially if you're running a business, there's struggles all the way through your career of independent working, and you
Mm,
need that support network. I mean, especially in the beginning when you're starting. We talk a lot about how freelancing is very isolating, depending on your extrovert, introvert, what you're doing. You can get pretty isolated before you realize what you're missing. And so I say, like, when you're starting, get involved with communities before you're even building it or before you even launch it, because you have a lot of shared knowledge within those communities of people who have been doing it for a long time. So
mhm,
before you even start, we always call it freelance curious. You're like, I'm just kind of wondering what it would be like to do this. Go ahead and talk to people and just ask them what their experiences are, because it helps you avoid making mistakes that you might have made if you didn't know. But it also helps you on the days when you're just like, wow, this is really hard, or a client's not paying me, or I didn't get that contract that I was really confident I was going to get,
mhm,
or my target audience isn't working. How should I change my business? So we always say, like, the key roles to fill out on your team are a cheerleader. So someone who's you can call and be like, I'm having the worst day ever. I'm really regretting all my decisions. Please help me. Someone
mm,
to lift you up. Somebody who's a good community networker. So somebody who has already been involved in the communities and connect, Uncompany a lot like that. We have a lot of resources and connections.
mm.
Finding somebody who we call like the adult in the room, or somebody who can help you with, advice. So I've been at every single stage of freelance. You're new. I could talk to you about what it's like to get through those stages. Finding some of those professionals, CPAs, to help you with your taxes, legal advice, if you get into that kind of situation. So just kind of like rounding out your team for those people that otherwise you might find baked into like a full-time regular employment type job.
Yeah, I think finding a mentor is really, really helpful in that way too. The person who's been there and done that before that you can lean on a little bit. And maybe that mentor person is also your cheerleader, but I do think that
Yeah.
in some ways they need to be, sometimes it helps if they're two different people too. Like you have one person that's your cheerleader that's like, maybe that's your parent or your best friend,
And so
somebody that's like, I know you can do it. I don't know how, but I believe in you and this is going to be great. And then your mentor is like, yes, you can do it. And here's the logical steps, or here's what I did. Or but having both of those and being able to go back to somebody who's already experienced a lot of your struggle,
mhm.
can one save you from making a few mistakes maybe and saving a little money and a little pain and struggle, but also just the reassurance that like they got through it so I can get through it too, I think
They
is a
could do
really,
it. I
really
could do
big
it
part of
too.
it, you know?
And it's nice to have in-person conversations if you can find somebody local to you to have that.
Mhm.
There's also a ton of online communities. Like at Uncompany, we're launching this community called Yacht Club, which is going to be kind of this online message board and shared resources board. But there's a ton of things out there in every town, big or small, that you can find and connect to. So it's super important.
Yeah, yeah, and as with anything, and we've talked about this a lot, but getting out into the real world, getting out there,
Yeah.
going to networking events, going and meeting people, you can think about any kind of local small business organizations that are around, your chamber of commerces, all of those types of things are all options. It depends on where you are and what the options are that are available to you, but I found early on when I was starting one of my businesses, just being out into the world every single day and telling people this is what I do and talking to people. It was the way that I got all my connections and it's the way that I met people that led to clients. It wasn't online is nice, online helps, but the like real world interaction and then making a plan to go get coffee with somebody that you've never talked to or met before, and getting the opportunity to talk to and meet as many different people, gather as many stories from them as possible. It really, really helped. And it helped to establish some relationships and friendships that I still have after
Mhm.
15 years or more, people that I can still go to now with business problems and say, like, hey, I'm
Yeah.
still struggling with this, even though, I'm at a different business and I'm working in a different way now and whatever. And they're still kind of my mentors in that way too. And a lot of them are also my cheerleaders. But
Mhm.
getting out into the real world, I just can't emphasize enough how important it is. Don't stay
Yeah.
at home. It's hard. It's really, really
Mhm.
hard. All right. So, what are some things that we could do to set some goals for ourselves now? So, we've got this thing, we're stepping into it, we're meeting some people, we're getting out there. How do you set goals, especially when it's early and you don't really have a gauge of like, I'm still struggling on how do I price myself? How long does it
Yeah.
take me to do certain things? What can I do early to set those goals? And then as I grow, what are some ways that you've learned once you get some data and some metrics that are sort of some healthy ways to go, okay, I'm at, level 2. and I'd like to get to level 5, but I don't want to overreach and I don't want to stretch myself out. How do I start to then set some goals in sort of a smart, responsible way so that I don't go too far too fast?
How do you level up to still
Yeah. Yeah.
waste
Level up with like a plan for living a regular life too on some level, like
Yeah.
not working 25 hours a day
Right.
in a
Yes.
24-hour, day.
Well, it's interesting because I remember when I first started out too, it feels a little like you're playing house sometimes when you're starting out businesses, because I remember I started setting a budget. Like I always say, when you're starting a business, we can add this to the beginning too, like build a budget, build a personal
Mhm.
budget. That helps you price yourself. I need to know how much I need to make to support my life. Then you
Mhm.
can back out your rate from that and your goals and hours. That's another podcast. We'll add that. But I think once you have an idea of like, this is what I need to make per month, then you build out a 12-month calendar of like, here's my monthly budget. Here's what I'm going to be bringing in every single month.
Mhm.
And my goal. So you're like, okay, if I know I need to make 4K a month to like just break even, my goal is going to be 5K a month. And so I'm putting that in my calendar. And every month, this is what I'm billing. Here's my expenses. And then what you do is it feels a little like this is all fictitious, right? But you don't have any data to build a budget for. So you're just going to create it in the future. And then every single month you're going to update it. And you're going to like, oh, actually, I didn't do so good this month, but I did better this month. And you can start to see those metrics change. So a lot of your goal planning when you're starting out is taking a best guess based on how much you know you're going to do. You're saying like, my goal is to land 4 clients a month. To do that, I'm thinking I need to talk to 25 new people a month. Okay, I'm going to break that out over, I'm going to talk to 3 to 5 people a week at these events. So you kind of start to like look at your bigger goals, and best guess is I'm going to reach 4 people a month. I'm going to get 4 jobs, but I have to talk to 25. So I'm going to have 21 of them are not going to give me any kind of work. And so you have to kind of start making those guesses and planning that out and then breaking it up, into chunks. So like, here's a month plan. In that month, and here's a weekly plan. Here's my daily plan. And then as you start to do that, you're like, okay, actually, I needed to talk to 30 clients to get 4. And then you start updating your goals. So I think it's like you need to do your best guess in your plan based on financial goals, based on what type of work you want to do in your reach. And then you just update as you go along. And then the more you do it, the better you get at predicting, like, this is my new business outreach, look what it looks like. And then you start to see those seasons. You're like, in the summer, everybody goes to the beach. It's really hard to get any work done. So I'm going to adjust my goals.
Mhm.
But it does, in the beginning, it feels a lot like you're like, I'm just guessing. And it's 100% right. You are just guessing because you don't have any data yet. You have to make a best guess and you have to shift. But one of the things that's really important with that, which is super helpful, is when you start out and you're coming from maybe a structured corporate environment or an agency environment or even school, you're so used to someone telling you what to do all day that you find yourself with this like massive amount of time to fill. So having those goals in place and giving yourself like, okay, if I'm going to try to reach 30 clients a month, that means I need to spend an hour every single day emailing or an hour every single day in LinkedIn. That just helps you plan your day so you don't feel
Mhm.
as like floaty, because I remember sending out client leads and then just hitting send and receive, like, okay, someone's going to email me back, because you don't know what to do with your time. So the better you can kind of plan, the better you can also feel like you're making use of your time, and you don't get to like Thursday, Friday, and you're like, I was busy all week, but I don't know if I made any progress. So it is really important to kind of build that structure out and then just be okay to change and actualize along the way.
Yeah, and one of the things you just touched on a little bit there is sort of like block scheduling that time
Mhm.
out for
Yeah.
like new business time. And I think that's really helpful and beneficial. If you take an hour a day or even 30 minutes a day or whatever it is to send those emails, to do that LinkedIn, to just be disciplined about it, the value of that will compound over time too.
Yes.
Your hour a day doesn't reach a lot of people on the first day. But if you continue with your hour a day over the course of a month and 2 months and 3 months, your responses will start to compound over time. Those people that you emailed in the first week might not respond until month 3.
Mm.
And that's okay. And if you emailed them a couple of times and you were busy and you just missed out on each other for the calendar, the schedule, whatever it is, you keep working, like gently, but also, you want to sort of push a little too sometimes.
Yeah.
Like you can be gentle in your reminder, but regular in your pushing to say like, hey, don't forget about me. Hey, I'm over here. You said you needed
Mhm.
my help. I'm still here. And you can do that without being annoying. There are plenty of ways to do that. But the important part is to understand that hour a day compounds over time. That benefit helps if you do it regularly. If you only do your sales work once a week or 1 week out of every month, it will compound slower.
Yeah.
It's just like money. If you imagine that if you could get your money to compound daily versus your money to compound yearly, you'll end up with a whole lot more money if it compounds in small little bits daily than if it just compounds once a year. It's
And
the
I think
same thing.
you bring up a good point. It's funny. When I first started out, the idea of selling your business is really hard for some people. I would say probably most people. It was really hard for me because you're still trying to convince yourself that you're legit. So hopefully you've gotten over that point. And there's a little bit of like, I feel bad. I'm asking. You have to switch your brain on to be like, I have a service that they need. I'm going to help them.
Yep.
And that is a big hurdle to get over. And it might take some work for you to get there. But understanding that and really believing that is essential as far as selling. Because if you don't believe that, if you believe that you're bugging them or you're like, oh, I don't want to be needy, then you're never going to stay up with it. And I remember one of the early questions I got, like when I first started out, was like, how do you keep talking to someone if they say they're not interested? Well, maybe you have a warm lead and you met them at a networking event or whatever. And they're like, oh, that's cool. Like send me an email. Maybe we can do some work together. You send them an email and either you don't hear back or they say, yeah, we can't do anything right now. Okay, that's cool. Like send them an email a month later. Hey, checking in. Like, I know we chatted here, blah, blah, blah. I saw this interesting thing that reminded me of your business. Share some kind of value, or here's a video I did that's, similar to the type of work I'd love to do with you. Share something. And if you hear back, awesome. If you don't, then like touch base with them again in another month. And if you don't hear from them again, then maybe bump it out another month and a half. Like you're not bugging them. You're just kind of staying top of mind. And that does work as long as you're not just like emailing them daily. It's like, don't harass them, just gentle reminders. And that usually, and they'll tell you like, hey, I'm just not interested. Like take me off your list or whatever. Okay, cool. But as long as you're sending them a note and you're also giving them value, like that's awesome. Like you're kind of having a casual conversation. You're not like pounding on their door.
Yeah, absolutely. Always approaching from the perspective of I want to help you, I think is a better sales tactic than hey, I need work. Nobody's going to hire you if you need work, but they will hire you all day long if you are there to solve a problem for them. Yes. And as it relates to that, I saved this Instagram post a while ago. It's from friend of the show, Jamie Brendel, who we did a podcast with a while ago now. And he posted this back on, I don't know, in mid-February at some point. And he said that he used to go into sales calls thinking his job was to convince the client. So he'd over-explain everything. He would talk about the features, the benefits, I'm the best one to do this, and then he would also over-promise when he did that because he's trying to explain and justify himself. So then he ends up over-promising. So then he'd walk away from that feeling that he was drained. And sometimes the clients would say yes. But then one day he said, I tried something different. Instead of saying, I'd love to work with you, I think I can help, he said, let's talk through your goals and see if I'm the right fit.
Yeah.
And what was so interesting about that little flip is, we want to help the client. We think we can do well with the client. But what we need to do is we need to make sure that the client's goals align with us and who we are and what we can provide. And the minute that you start to say to the client, hey, let's talk through your goals and see if I'm the right fit, you've completely changed the conversation now, because then you're on their side, you're collaborating and you're working together to see if this project is going to work for both sides. You've just totally changed that. And so even when you think you're going to help, try to frame it in those ways. Like, I might not be the right fit. I might know somebody who's a better fit. Great. You still win. You still get your problem solved. And then you'll remember me for later on. I thought that was genius and brilliant.
I love that too, because the best outcome for those conversations are the client is then asking you to help them, right? It's like, they're then like, oh no, we really want you to do, like, we're kind of in this co-collaborating together already. And it's great because it's like, you've shared what you can do. And then you're like, the best thing to do as far as from a business perspective is being okay to walk away. And if you have that confidence in your business and the power, like, this is what I do, I want to work with people that need that service, and I can look away if it's not a good fit, then it gives you the opportunity to like pitch your business and find good clients from like a really great position of power and alignment. Because you walk into a client situation where you're not aligned or you're trying to oversell them, and then you find yourself throughout the whole project trying to convince them that you were the right fit, as opposed to being like, we're the right from the beginning. We're going to make this work and we're going to do something great together. And that's like so much better to work from.
Yeah. You always want to start from the perspective of collaboration, and I want the best for you, whether that's me or that's somebody else. And once they decide that it's you, then it's so much easier to work as equals instead of a hey, I'm working for you, please pay me. It's we are equals and we're solving a problem together.
Yeah.
Super helpful. All right. Are there any other, before we get to the lightning round, are there any other sort of nuggets of wisdom that you have out there for people related to this? Just, don't be afraid to get started.
Yeah. I mean, going back to the title of this podcast, I think it's like, there's always going to be things that are going to be unknown, but just go, just move forward. I think it's a lot of times we can get into, depending on your propensity, the paralysis analysis, where we're just like, well, when the temperature is 85 and it's partly sunny and it's on a Saturday, then I'm going to start because it's going to be, conditions will be perfect. And the truth is, with a lot of things, especially with starting a business, like you need to be prepared. But as long as you, put some runway and you have some savings, you have some clients, you've done some of the upfront work, and you have all that in place, and you're like, okay, I have 6 months saved, 4 months saved, whatever. So that's what I did when I started. I was like, you know what? I'm going to save enough to where if I have no work for 4 months, I'm covered, and then I got to the point where I knew I was ready to go. If I get no work in 4 months, am I so ready to leave this job and try this freelance career that I'm willing to take a job at Starbucks or do something else to be able to help myself keep going till I get it going? And I absolutely was. I was like, I want to do this so much that I'm willing to piece together other things to be able to build this career. And if you're at that point, then you're ready to go. And then you just need to go and know that there's going to be some missteps and there's going to be some learning. And that's like 100% okay, because you're doing something that's new. Even though you maybe have been an account manager, a copywriter, a designer forever, you've never been a self-employed copywriter, designer, account manager. So it's still a new thing. So you have to give yourself a little bit of break to understand that there's going to be some things that you're just going to have to navigate. But if you put those safety rails in place, you've got space to learn. So
yeah, absolutely. 100%. Good words of wisdom there. All right. So lightning round. Did you know that you wanted to be your own boss when you were a kid, or did you plan for something different?
Oh, man. I think I've always been very bossy and very self-driven. I mean, I am a Virgo, so I've got that like type A control sense about me, but I really didn't. I mean, when I left college, I wanted to be in advertising and I wanted to crush that and be the best at it. The idea of starting my own business was not on my radar. My parents were both normally employed folks. So I'm super grateful that I was able to make that transition because it's the best. Everyone's like, I don't know if I could ever go work for anyone else. And maybe I could, I'm not sure, but no, I didn't. And it's been great so far.
Yeah. I think, I would go to baseball card trade shows when I was a little kid and set up my own little booth and sell my baseball cards. And so I think I always had this weird little bit of entrepreneurial spirit in me from the time I was little, that I was like, I'm just trading or selling baseball cards. And it was, small little bits, and I'd pay me like $30 for my table and, in the mall in my small town or whatever. And I might walk away with $50, and so I made a profit of $20, and then I'd reinvest that back into baseball cards. And,
see, you're ahead.
I guess I was in that way. I'm kind of sad for kids that don't get a chance to do something like that, but that's kind of the way that I thought and approached the world, even from a young age. And so when I went off to college and I thought I wanted to be a musician, when you're thinking about being a musician, then you're like, well, I'm just going to work for myself, and then I'll, wait tables or do some odd job in order to. And so I think it's just always been in my brain. The entrepreneurial side of things has just always been there for me. Probably the hardest time I had, like mental health wise, is when I felt like I was working for the man in a big giant corporation and I was just a cog in a wheel. That was really, really hard for me. But the times when I was, working in an entrepreneurial way on something that I was passionate about, interested in, even when I didn't make a lot of money, I didn't have the mental health struggles that I had the other way around. And so for me, I think I'm just wired that way. I don't know how to function the other way. Well, I do, but I know it's not good for me. It's good for other people. That way. Like I have friends who are great in that other world and they're built for it, and, good for them. I think it's great. It's wonderful for them. It's just not, it's not my mentality. So I knew, I think from the time I opened my first pack of baseball cards and traded them with somebody else, Tried to get into Garbage Pail Kids for a little while back in the
Oh,
day, but
yeah.
that just wasn't my jam though. I couldn't make that one work. So yeah. All right. Next one. How can you tell early if your business idea is not going to work?
I think this is also important with putting in some checkpoints to say, like, okay, I'm going to do this for 3 months and I need to make these goals. Like, I think it's important to have goals that you can track against. If you're not meeting any of your goals and you're trying everything, maybe it's not that your business won't work, but maybe your audience is off, or maybe your pricing, maybe what you're hearing is like, okay, this service is not selling. Maybe I do something else. So I think it's like, it's really good to put those markers in so that you can check yourself against. And I think it's those kind of things are really good to share with somebody else who can come to you and be like, hey, you told me that your marker was going to be 3 months. You're at 3 months. Like, what's the honest truth? Like, you need someone who can also kind of call you. We call that like the devil's advocate, or somebody who can be a little bit more direct with you. And I think having those markers in place that you can measure against are really key. And then also just being like, it doesn't mean my business is failing. It means that like this service is not correct. My pricing is off. My audience is not right. And then adjusting.
Yeah. I think the key part here is to separate yourself from your business a little bit.
Yes.
You know, if someone turns your business down for work, that doesn't mean that they're rejecting you as a human being.
Uh,
And,
right. Yeah.
and
It's not your
that is
personal self-worth. Hopefully you can separate that.
right. But that is hard when you first start and you think like everything's great and it's like, well, they just don't like me, or they just don't,
Yeah.
I'm not presenting well, or whatever it is. If you listen very closely, the feedback that you will get from people who say no to you will help to direct you to the thing that will work. But you
Mhm.
have to be willing to listen with open ears and an open mind. You can't listen from the perspective of like an emotional rejection side of things,
Yeah.
or you'll never hear the good constructive criticism that they're kind of telling you on the inside. So just make sure that you're listening clearly and openly, and it doesn't come from a place of being defensive. You can even categorize no's as like, no, that absolutely wasn't a fit, or that would have been a bad client, versus no, that would have been a great client, but here's why it didn't work out. You can start to categorize that, get some data. It doesn't have to be like fancy data. You can just journal it down, write it
Mhm.
down and say like, this one didn't work out and here's why. And then you can go back and figure it out. After you get a few rejections, you can figure out why you're getting consistent rejections too.
Yeah.
All right. So in hindsight, do you wish that you had started sooner, or do you feel like it was like the right timing for you?
Yeah, no, I think the timing was perfect. I mean, it all kind of coincided with a lot of life stuff happening. And so I don't think I would have started before all of that happened. And it started at, it's interesting. I talked to like some kids now who are coming out of college and just starting their freelance business. I think the sooner you can get started, obviously, then you give yourself a little more space to learn and build. But for me, I think the timing was what it needed to be. And I appreciate and I'm glad I was able to work in a traditional like agency environment for those years before, because that helped me understand now when I work with agencies or when I work with clients, I understand what they're feeling because I've worked in that situation. So having that information background was super, super valuable. And so I think the timing was perfect.
Value, even though I say that it was the time when I had the sort of biggest mental health struggles, I value the time that I spent working in the big corporation sort of situation, because I had some great mentors and I had some people that really taught me how to be a professional and how to present myself in front of clients, and how to speak, and how to talk in front of a room full of people that were more important than me and making more money than me and had fancier titles than I did. And I could still walk into those rooms with confidence that I knew what I was talking about. And so there was some real value in learning that and struggling through that, even if it was hard for me, so that when I was ready to leave and go out on my own, I felt like it was like taking the training wheels off of the bike. I'd still had those mentors. I still have some friends that I talk to today from that job, but I would not have been able to make it and pay my bills had I not gone through that experience for the first 8 years of my career, and really learned a lot of lessons and gotten a ton of experience doing a lot of different things. So to me, there is some value in working for someone in a company, big or small, being accountable to them, finding a mentor in that company, showing up every single day, 9 to 5, doing the grind, all that stuff while you're young. I think there's some real benefit to that if it works for you. So that when you get out and work on your own, you'll still have some structure to your day. You'll still get up at 9 and do some work and then finish at 5 or whatever. But and you'll learn to like schedule your day and all that. there's some real benefit to it. And the last part is that mentorship piece. Getting a good mentor early on in your career, it just helps to have somebody that has succeeded in the thing that you're going to do so that you can go back to them. Well,
Yeah.
anyway, I think that's all for today. This has been a really fun conversation, and this hour has flown by for me. I could talk about starting a business all day long, I think, but that is it for us today. So thank you so much for tuning in and quitting with us. If you are new to the podcast, you can visit us at commandqpodcast.com to learn more about joining our proud community of quitters. To check out our full episode library, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We even have a YouTube channel now. And so you can see our smiling faces if you'd like to do that, but you don't have to. Also, if you're interested in being part of our new online community called the Yacht Club, this is a place where we are going to start to have some of these conversations, and hopefully you can meet some people online. And we're really going to put some effort into building that over the next 12 months or so. So anyway, join us. Go to weareuncompany.com/yacht-club, or you can just get to the Uncompany website, weareuncompany.com, and you'll see the link to it there. So until next time, I'm John.
And I'm Ari.
And we're reminding you that quitters can win and winners can quit. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the guest's own and do not necessarily represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Command Q or Uncompany.